Trust me, I'm not being overdramatic when I say that Eleanor Roosevelt knew exactly what she was talking about when she said, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself. Learning from others' mistakes can be life-changing. It may come across as a lazy way of making something of yourself, but truthfully, it's something that will improve the quality and longevity of your life. Today, I wanted to share with you a few of the running mistakes we at Coach Parry still make. You could think of them as hard lessons that we've learned, so you don't have to.
So one of the most common mistakes that runners make is running too fast. And when I say running too fast, I mean running too fast all round. We know that most runners already run their easy runs too fast. And this means that you end up in what is called a moderate pace rut, where you're neither recovering from your runs, and while you are gaining aerobic fitness, you're getting more tired progressively throughout your training cycle. Another point where we do run too fast is in our interval sessions. So many runners go out and do high intensity sessions and try and maximize their effort in these sessions instead of trying to run at the optimum pace for the session in question. The combined effect of all of this is that we end up running everything too fast and we end up getting overly fatigued, and this compromises our performance overall, and it means that we often don't race our best because we're too tired on race day.
So one of the mistakes I still make when it comes to my running is around chafing. I'm obviously not one of the smallest runners on the planet, and I know better, but I often make this mistake. If I'm going out for a long run, sometimes I forget to lube up the way I should. So between my legs or under my arms, something like a petroleum jelly really makes the world of difference. Another place that I chafe a lot is my nipples, and I need to make sure that I tape up or plaster my nipples, particularly when I head out on a long run. And often I forget, I'm too eager to get out on the road and I forget to do it. One thing I also need to make sure of is if I'm going to be sweating a lot, so if it's going to be really hot out on the run or if there's rain predicted, just to make 100% sure that I do have my nipples plastered and I am lubed up enough so that I don't chafe on my long runs.
The classic mistake I see all the time is people running too often and neglecting recovery. I see it from my young athletes to my older athletes. When they are training, they'll just like to run back to back, but what they're missing out, what they're neglecting, what they're forgetting is they don't absorb that training into their body if they're not recovering. It's just really important that you spend time and focus on your recovery as much as you're running. Your running is key to making those adaptations that we are needing to get you to your race or to your goal or where you want to get to with your running. Recovery is vital for those adaptations, to make those adaptations each week to build the running consistency that we're looking for. So every week you need to do your run sessions, your long, your easy and your sessions, and you need to recover. And recovery will allow you to build week on week, month on month to get you to your race goals. Another area I see time and time again is not recovering after a major race that you've done. I see it all the time with my athletes. They do a marathon, they do a 10K, they're super excited and they just want to run again. And they're like, oh, it's really easy, Nikki, I'm fine. But it's not. They need to recover. They need to take those days off. In my experience, I see it with my athletes, but this applies across the board. You need to fully recover from a race, both mentally and physically, before thinking about getting back into training.
Running through illness and injury. We all struggle with knowing when we should run, when we shouldn't run, and we all get paranoid and feel like we're missing out on valuable training. And I'm no exception to that rule. One thing that I have learnt over the years though, is that we don't heal faster, and we certainly cannot get healthy quicker if we train through injury and illness. And with illness in particular, there's the very real risk of doing permanent or life-threatening damage if we train through a viral infection. So my advice to people when they are sick is quite simply not to train. I'm going to give you some advice on how you can perhaps look at training through some mild injuries. Then I'm going to use an example for you of myself where it really didn't work out so well for me. But as a general rule, I've got 3 pillars that I use when trying to make a decision about whether I should rest or whether I can train a little bit through an injury. The first is, if I start running, does the pain get worse, stay the same, or actually get better while I'm running? If it's scenario 1 and 2, if that injury is getting more painful as I run that current run, then you must stop and you have to have some rest and treatment so that you can get yourself over that injury. If the pain is fairly similar and it doesn't get worse, I would also strongly suggest that you rest and recover. Because in my case, when I was training for the Boston Marathon and I thought, listen, it's not getting worse while I'm running, so let me see if it perhaps gets better between runs, and the pain is actually less and less and less. And really all that ultimately happened is that I had 3 to 4 weeks of ineffective training that left me at the end with an injury that had moved from acute to chronic, and then needing to go through my physiotherapy and missing 2 weeks of training, and suddenly I found myself 6 weeks behind where I should have been. And the reality is, if I just dealt with the injury in the way that I should have right at the beginning, I may have cost myself less than a week, but maximum 2 weeks, instead of missing 6 weeks of training. The second part of my puzzle is that if you are running and in the run it actually feels better, however, when you start the next run, there is a noticeable difference. In other words, the discomfort has increased, or there's been no change, then the same applies. Then you must stop and rest and seek treatment so that you can deal with that injury. If you don't do that, you're going to be like me and compromise your Boston Marathon and not perform the way that you should have on race day, because you've actually missed so much of your training by being too scared to miss 3 or 4 sessions to deal with your injury.
Another key mistake that a lot of people make is running in shoes for too long, running in too many miles in the same shoe. So you'll start to get achy knees, maybe pick up injuries, and you want to really think about replacing those. So it is really good to log the mileage that you're doing in your running shoes. So you've got a gauge of how long you can last in those shoes. When you run in running shoes for too long, they lose their structural properties. That means they lose their bounce, they lose their support for you, especially if you're a slightly heavier runner. You just need that support and that extra bounce in your shoes. And I know a lot of us don't like to replace our shoes. I certainly have a lot of favorite shoes that I really like to run in, and I don't like to put those away. And they are expensive to buy as well. So also people don't want to buy new shoes because it's an extra expense. But it's really worth having good running shoes. It's really worth having that support for yourself, for your body, because if you pick up an injury, you're just going to spend more money on physios or sports massages to help with those niggles and injuries that you pick up from having shoes that are old and past it, that you should have replaced a while ago.
One of the common mistakes we still see runners making is neglecting strength training. We are massive advocates of strength training here at Coach Parry, and we talk about it in many of our videos and implement it in all of our training programs. The strength training is absolutely vital to complement your running. We talk about your body's resistance to fatigue, how the strength training helps you handle the amount of training load that you're putting yourself under, the eccentric load on the legs from a competitive running action, and that in itself helps the breakdown of muscle fibers. We really want to be preparing our body so we are a lot stronger, so we are minimizing our risk of injuries. Another factor with the strength training is it does also help us improve our running performance, and it does so by improving our running economy. It allows us to have a stronger posture, lot stronger base, in order for us to produce the forces into the ground in a linear motion, in a forward motion, so that that's where our propulsion is going, rather than us sort of being a bit lanky and sloppy all over the show, wobbling a little bit and losing our force going in the direction towards the finish line. So strength training gets neglected. It's one of those things that's, I don't have time today, I don't think I can get around to it, and it's the first thing that falls by the wayside. We are runners, we love running, and that's all we want to do. But I can tell you now, you will benefit more by maybe even dropping one of your runs in the week and doing a strength training session. It doesn't have to be long. It can be something you do in your own home. It can be resistance training using just body weight if you're a complete beginner and you've never done any strength training. And obviously, the more of a base you have, the more of a foundation you've built, the better training history you've got from a strength training point of view, the more you can start to add a little bit of weight, a bit more resistance, some higher reps and sets into that as well. But it is absolutely key. We talk about how often you should be doing strength training. Ideally, according to the literature, we want to be looking at about 3 sessions a week. However, we know that that is not always possible when you have families, you have full-time jobs, and we actually just don't have the time in the week. So for us at Coach Parry, we have a saying that 2 sessions is better than 1, 1 is better than none. So just doing a training session a week will be better than not doing it at all. I really do urge you, don't drop the strength training, include it in your training program, and you will be better off for it.
Another running mistake that we've made is focusing too much on the marginal gains and not enough on the basics. So what does that mean? Really just, not looking at the basic aspects that are going to make you a better runner, but focusing on the fun, shiny objects that look cooler, seem better, all while not looking at the basics that are really going to make you a good runner. An example of this is I've been perhaps working too late or going out and not focusing on good sleep habits, but after my running sessions, I'm standing there using my foam roller and making sure I'm recovering enough. If you do not get the basics of sleep and nutrition right, you will never recover enough. No matter what fun, shiny compression garments or foam roller you're using, you have to get the basics absolutely right first. So I really hope that you guys learn from this mistake, because this really is one of the big things that I see most recreational runners do anyways. They want to go after the fun, shiny objects, but not focus on the basic principles that are going to make them a good runner. Those principles are often the more boring parts of training, but they're the things that really work.
Another mistake runners make is not doing any cross training. As runners, we like to see ourselves as being only runners, and that's all that we want to spend our time doing. I know for myself that I really don't enjoy doing any gym work or any of that sort of thing. So if I go out and try and do gym work, I'll be 20 minutes in and I'm done. For running, I'll go out and run for 2 hours and I'll feel absolutely no difference in doing that. So as runners, we need to recognize that running is just one activity that contributes to our fitness, and especially for injury prevention, we need to be conscious about doing more than just running. Safe activities for cross-training include swimming, cycling, perhaps something like yoga for strength training. And once you end up including all these activities into your training, you'll find that you become a much better all-round athlete.
This is definitely a case of do as we say, not do as I do, because this is a mistake that I made very recently when training for the London Marathon. I had a 4-hour long run to do in the build-up to the marathon. I woke up eager to get out, didn't have anything for breakfast, and about an hour and a half into the run, didn't have any nutrition with me and hit the wall like I've never hit the wall before, sitting on the pavement wondering how I was going to make my way home. But thankfully, we've put together a really good video that goes through exactly what you should be doing from a fueling perspective before, during, and after any of your long runs, and you can watch that video by clicking on the link on screen now.
As I mentioned earlier when I was talking around the mistakes we've made with marginal gains and focusing or not focusing on the sleep aspects, one of the other big mistakes that we've made is poor sleeping habits. Now, emphasis on sleep and recovery is vital, as I mentioned earlier, but one of the mistakes that we've made is perhaps focusing on the quantity of sleep, so trying to get as many hours as you can, but not necessarily thinking about the quality of that sleep. We like to call this sleep hygiene. So these are things you can do to really ensure that your quality and quantity of sleep is maximized. So make sure that your room is really dark, that you don't have light curtains allowing any kind of light in. If you do, something like a good set of eye patches works really effectively. Make sure that there's no little lights within your room, so a light from a TV or your cell phone that's going to interrupt your sleep in the night. And really importantly, try and stay away from blue lights at least an hour before bed. I know this is a mistake that most of us are definitely making, is staying on our devices too close to the time you go to bed. So playing on your phone or your laptop or watching something on your laptop before you go to bed, that blue light has an effect on the melatonin in your system, which will have an effect on your quality of sleep before you go to bed. Other aspects of sleep hygiene that are important is the temperature of your room. You do not want that to be too cool, and obviously too hot will disrupt sleep. So make sure you've got light linen that helps you stay nice and cool. Also, if it is warm, a fan to continue to blow some cooler air, not directly onto you, but to keep the room nice and cool.
And then the last really important point around sleep hygiene and factors that will affect your sleep is your intake of alcohol. It will always have a negative effect on your sleep. You might feel like you sort of pass out and sleep well, but you do not have good quality sleep when you have had alcohol intake.
Another common mistake runners make, and I am very guilty of this, is forgetting sunscreen. On a day like today, you can see it's cold, it's a winter's day here in Africa. I'm dressed warm, I'm trying to be as cozy as possible, but that is not to say the sun is still not burning my skin. I often go out on training runs and forget to put sunscreen on. I'm out there for an hour, 2 hours, and when I get home, I pay the price. And I'm not the only one. I do urge you to apply sunscreen when you are running, regardless of the duration. It can be a winter's day, a hot sunny day, the sun is still doing damage to the body. What you want to do is you want to try and look for something that is preferably waterproof as well, so that when you are sweating a lot, you're not necessarily constantly wiping that sunscreen away. But you do also get small little sachets of sunscreen for ease of carrying an application that you can reapply on those ultra long runs that you might be on when you are sweating and constantly wiping the sunscreen and the sweat off of your face. Constant application is going to keep you protected from the sun regardless of what the temperature is out there.
The last mistake we make is neglecting warm-ups and cool-downs. Again, I can be guilty of this sometimes. You think that you don't have enough time to get your workout in, you're rushing from one place to another and squeezing workouts between things that you're trying to do. Neglecting your warm-ups and cool-down only exposes you to a higher risk of injury, both because you haven't warmed up enough for the particular session that you have got planned out for you, and from compromising your overall mobility, because all you're doing is the running part and you're not doing the mobility that we do in the warm-ups and the cool-downs. So always prioritize enough time and rather compromise a little bit on the actual workout than compromising on your warm-up and cool-down. In the warm-up, you want to be doing some mobility exercises, making sure that you get your body going, making sure that you increase your body's range of motion so that when you are doing the workout itself, be it an easy run or an interval type of session, that you are not working at the limits of your range of motion, which is when we put ourselves at the biggest risk for injury. In terms of our overall improvement of range of motion and mobility, doing exercises and a proper cool down and stretch post exercise is the most important thing to do to ensure that your mobility improves and stays good over a long period of time. And that is simply why warming up helps to improve overall performance. It really is a foolproof method, guaranteed to give you results. But there is one other thing that'll have a positive impact on your performance. And to be honest, it might make you look a little bit silly. But it really is fun and will give you an instant boost. So go and check out this video to see what you need to do.